before I say the time. There we go. Perfect. Look at that. A well-oiled machine. Welcome to the Administrative Transformation Project updates and the ancillary systems considerations. I personally appreciate you doing this session as an ancillary systems owner. It's wonderful to find out what's going on and keep updated on everything. So thank you for the folks that are here. And we have Tom Jordan, Charlie Calderon, and Morgan Anderson who are going to update us. Let's see. They're going to give us some updates, and then we'll have a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So if you want to put your questions in chat, if there's something that's super relevant to what they're saying, I will interrupt. But if it's not, if it can wait till the end, I will try to keep it to the end so you can get through your presentation first. So, all right, take it away, Morgan.
All right, I'll take it away. And Charlie did drop a link in the chat as well to a Padlet. So for anyone who might not be comfortable throwing their questions into this chat where we can see your name, the Padlet is anonymous. So go ahead and feel free to add questions, comments, etc. into that as we go through. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Amanda for facilitating the session and Murnaz for the technical support. Super excited to be joined today by Tom and Charlie. My name is Morgan Anderson. I am the ATP Integration Strategy Lead. I've been with the program for 2.5 months now. And today I'm going to be providing a bit of a higher level overview of where things stand with the Administrative Transformation Program, as well as what we see coming next before I then hand over to Tom to talk a bit about some of the impacts to the ancillary systems and some of the things that you can be doing to start to prepare yourselves for the upcoming change. And then Charlie will wrap things up for us. We're hoping to leave a good 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the session today to have a dialogue with all of you. All right, so just to level set for those of you who may not be aware, or as a reminder for those of you who may have heard this before, when we talk about the Administrative Transformation Program and what's sort of in scope for the work that ATP is picking up, we are rolling out 2 sets of software solutions. So we are rolling out Workday for finance, human resources, and a little bit of research administration. And then we're also rolling out the Huron Research Suite for our research administration as part of the Research Administration Modernization Program, also known as RAMP, which is also what the new Huron Research Suite solutions are going to be called in the future. So for Workday, we have 17 modules that are going to be part of our July 2024 go live. And for the Huron Research Suite, there are a series of 5 modules that are being rolled out. Some have already gone live. The Administrative Transformation Program is a quite ambitious and sizable effort, and there are a number of individuals outside of the program itself that have been involved and engaged and will continue to be involved and engaged over the next year. So we have a series of focus and validation groups. I just wanted to provide an overview for the group so you can see how many individuals we have in engaging administrators, staff, faculty on campuses. So 465 total across the UW campuses, as well as UW System Administration and UW Shared Services. The focus groups were heavily engaged last year to provide input into and review of the designs and business process designs for Workday implementation. And those validation groups are going to be heavily involved as we start to enter our next phase. So looking at the Workday implementation timeline, this is very high level, but you'll see we have a number of phases on the blue line here. ATP had kicked off a few years back and some initial legwork was done. There were some leadership adjustments and shifts and realignments, and things really started kicking off again in January of 2022, so last January. So you'll see on this timeline, January through April was really the initial planning phase before the program moved into the architect phase, which kicked off in May. And architect is really, oh, sorry. Thank you, Tom. My apologies, I was talking without moving the slides. So this was the overview slide for our focus and validation groups on campuses, just so that you can see somewhat that distribution with 257 staff at Madison. And thanks, Susan, for asking. There's the timeline. All right, so as we look at the timeline, see that planning phase again, January through April of 2022. In May 2022 was where we transitioned into the architect phase, which was really the design, business process design, figuring out how things would flow and work in Workday. That took us through the majority of 2022. This phase was also where a number of you may have been engaged by our business analysts who were working to confirm and validate the list of ancillary or legacy or outside of current state PeopleSoft systems that we had on campus, to ensure that we had a comprehensive list, as well as to start working together with the design teams within ATP to determine what that future state would be for your systems. That design and architect phase wrapped up in December 2022, and that's when we entered configure and prototype, which is the phase that we're in at the moment. This is the phase where the functional teams within the program are working on configuring Workday, finalizing all of their business processes, and this is also the phase where the integrations developers have really started to actually make some movement and get to start working on the integrations as the designs are finalized. Some key dates that are coming here. The testing phase begins in July, so next month. We kick off test and train. End user training is anticipated to begin in March of 2024, and we have our targeted go live of July 2024. All right, when we look at a slightly more detailed version of the timeline, the Workday implementation that we took a look at is the top row there in blue, but we do also have adaptive planning that has been added to our scope. That's going to be rolling out in 2 phases. So the first phase for adaptive planning is also targeted to go live in July 2024, and immediately after that deployment, the second phase of that initiative will be kicking off. The bottom section here is all focused on the research administration space. So these are the components of the Huron Research Suite implementation. We did roll out financial forecasting, which is available just to a very small set of users last July, and employee compensation compliance, which is the replacement for our previous ECRT solution, went live in August 2022. ECRT has been running somewhat in parallel just for validation purposes, and is actually targeted to be brought down towards the end of this month. We do have 2 programs in progress right now, targeting a June 26th deployment. So both export control, which is UW-Madison specific, as well as grants and agreements only for UW-Madison. So those teams are heads down right now in their final testing and validation and working with end users to confirm that everything's set up for their deployment in just a couple of weeks. One thing to note for those 4 solutions that I've mentioned is that all 4 solutions, since they are going live or have gone live before our Workday rollout, they are integrating with PeopleSoft shared financial services at the shared financial systems at the moment. So these do have direct integrations to SFS, which will then be updated to integrate with Workday over the next year. There is also another separate grants and agreements solution that will be much more off the shelf, out of the box, less customized, and that will be available for Milwaukee and the rest of the comprehensives, and that is targeted to go live on July 2024 together with Workday. So I mentioned briefly we were entering test and train next month. We do have just a couple of dates here for you and to provide a little bit of context of what that's going to entail. So June 18th is when we are going to be taking our production snapshot of HRS and SFS that is going to be used to load into our end-to-end testing tenant. In addition to that, a lot of manual mapping has been being done across the campuses to map current state funding streams to their future state Workday values, and those Q1 and Q2 fiscal year 2023 values will also be part of what's loaded into the end-to-end testing tenant. July is when test and train officially kicks off. The week of July 10th is when ATP has its official kickoff activities scheduled. And August 14th will be when our end-to-end round one kicks off. And this is in ATP team participation in end-to-end round one. Our focus has really been on the kind of most important things for us. So paying our people, paying our bills, making sure that we can hire, making sure we can offboard. So payroll, benefits, procurement, suppliers, onboarding, offboarding. And that means in the integration space, we've been focused on our integrations out to groups like the Department of Administration, Department of Workforce Development, Revenue, the Employee Trust Fund, Wisconsin Retirement System, Optum Financial, and also our Shop UW Plus e-procurement solution. We will then in November 6th is the target date at the moment, transition into end-to-end testing round 2. And that's where we'll then be pulling in those focus and validation groups as well to really validate that the input that they had provided has been realized in Workday. And provide that confirmation before we then move into our user acceptance testing phase, which should be coming at the end of January 2024. And before I hand over to Tom, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're dealing with in the numbers space. So across UW's system, we have identified a total of 1,831 ancillary systems. This is a soft number in that there are some duplicates in this total. There are also some systems that after reviewing, we've determined aren't going to be impacted, but we did try to throw our net as wide as possible so that we wouldn't miss anything critical to operations. Of those 1,800, at the moment, 820 have a disposition of keep, meaning that they expect to continue to live on after our Workday rollout. 41 of those still have a disposition of to be determined. January through April of this year, the ATP functional teams were hosting a series of customer confirmation sessions where they were demoing and providing an overview of Workday functionality. And now that those are wrapped up, it's time for our ancillary systems business analysts to work with those 41 system owners to determine the next steps for those systems. And of that total list, we have just 304 that have been identified to be replaced by Workday. I have a link in here as well. This ancillary systems disposition list is available after NetID login. It includes all of the ancillary systems identified for all of the campuses. For Madison specifically, you can also sort by school, college, or division. And the list here, when you scroll to the right, will also include your primary contact from the ancillary systems business analyst team. Each school, college, and division does have a high-level contact, but each system within each area also has a specific system-specific contact. And Brian, to your question, yeah, so 666. The remaining, we have some, like I mentioned, we have some duplicates. We have some shared instances across campus that'll show up 13 times on the list. We do have some that were identified and that either since have been retired or will be retired before Workday go live. We do have a chunk that we're determined not to be impacted. And then we also have a number that are still recently identified and need to step through that disposition process. And with that, I will hand things over to Tom to talk about the impacts.
All right. So my name is Tom Jordan, and I'm a solutions architect with DeWitt's Application Infrastructure Services Group. I'm also supporting the ancillary systems effort. Before we dive into things, I did want to say, we've used this term ancillary to represent these systems and their relationship to our core HR and finance ERP. Ancillary might imply secondary or subordinate or things like that, but that's solely from the perspective of the HR and finance ERP. Everyone working on this program understands fully that these systems are critical to our day-to-day operations across the board and are incredibly impactful to our ability to do, to do the work of the university. So I didn't want there to be any questions around that. When we look at our move from our existing on-prem ERPs to a cloud ERP like Workday, there are a number of changes that we're going to see. And of course, this is touching on HR and finance right now. As we learned when we went through a learning management system migration to a cloud ERP with Canvas, as we're learning in this space, and as we will learn with other ERPs, the cloud environment is different than an on-prem environment. We have less flexibility in the way that we, interact with an application's underlying infrastructure. And we're, constrained by choices that the vendor is providing in how we are able to access data and things like that. So there's really three areas that we see changes when we're going from our current PeopleSoft environment to Workday. The first one is around the structure of the data itself. And organizational structure is a big one. I'll talk a little bit more on that in a bit. But systems that are using UDDS today to understand both HR organizational structure, financial organizational structure, and things like that will need to understand the changes that Workday represents around those things. Our financial data structures as well are changing to align with Workday's foundation data model, and I'll touch on a little bit of those some of those changes in another slide or two. Our HR data structures are largely comparable. There are some minor changes, but you can assume that a lot of the same concepts will apply. We will still have employees, they will still have titles, they'll still have supervisors and things like that. But there are a few changes in that space as well. A big one is a big change that we have is in a change to data sourcing. As a cloud ERP, Workday doesn't expose its underlying databases to us. We can't make a database connection, an SQL query against Workday. It just doesn't work that way. Additionally, as a multi-tenant cloud provider, Workday imposes API throttling and other performance limits that reduce our ability to directly interact with the ERP in the way that we might have with an on-premise ERP without hitting things like throttling limits or interfering with the operational use of the system. Finally, there's a significant change in data transport. Access to, as I mentioned, there is not a direct database interface to Workday. Our access is through APIs and other integration interfaces, which sometimes are much more broad than what we need to be able to expose to the campus community. So part of our integration strategy with Workday is to build some institutional APIs to help moderate some of those changes. All that to say, there are very few cases where we think that the move from PeopleSoft data to Workday data is going to be fully transparent for applications. Most systems are going to have to understand these changes and will likely need to make some changes themselves to be able to adapt to this model. So diving into org structure a little bit, currently we use UDDS in many systems to be able to represent all sorts of aspects of organizational structure. The department that I work in, the account that pays my salary, things like that, all tied to a common organizational structure and a smart identifier that codes the hierarchy into the identifier itself. In the future, The Workday model, there are different hierarchies that are related but separate. Supervisory organizations speak to how we organize people. Who do I report to? Who does my boss report to? Things like that. The foundation data model talks about how we organize funds. And this gets into cost centers and expense types and things like that. And then academic organizations are a fairly narrow concept in Workday. They provide just a couple of functions to be able to relate HR data back to specific academic programs or academic structures. There's some visual representation here of some of the changes to the foundation data model, our finance organizational structure. These are largely things that allow us to be more precise in the way that we describe, how different funds relate to one another and things like that. Certainly, if your ancillary systems are dealing with funding strings today, you will definitely be impacted by this, and you'll need to understand the new foundation data model. So where we are right now, we're still working to understand some major things, and this is a good example of us kind of being in a place with the ancillary systems program where we may not have complete answers to all questions, but we don't want to stop that from. We don't want to let that stop us from reaching out and sharing what we do know. We're still working to understand the impact of the UDDS replacement, particularly around supervisory organization data. One of the ways that we've used UDDS in the past is as a representation of a department or an organizational unit. Supervisory organizations in Workday are a little bit different than that in that they represent a reporting role. Rather than departments, they really represent supervisory relationships, which for the most part is the same, but there are certainly cases where it is not. And so we still have some work to do to figure that out. Likewise, understanding some of the systems that we are going to be retiring and what the plan for replacement of some of our existing ERP data warehouses, like the EPM HR data warehouse and Wiser, the financial data warehouse, are things that we're still working on figuring out. And then a few of the other things, verifying, systems that are in the replace category, understanding academic units, and then how we are going to be doing ancillary system testing and implementation. Significant challenge that we've got is that the ancillary systems owners are really the only ones that understand how their particular system interacts with HR financial data. And so we'll be really, looking to ancillary system owners to help us understand what a testing and implementation plan is going to look like for their particular system. So some things that you can do as an ancillary system owner or other stakeholder to be able to start to prepare for some of these changes. We have a system owner roadmap. You can see the link there that provides information about the steps that that we're going through in this process. Also on that page, we have listed out an integration rubric that defines the different integration patterns that we're recommending, so that you can understand how we're approaching integration with Workday. We are, for the most part, trying to de-emphasize direct integration with the ERP for a lot of the reasons that I provided earlier, and to focus on integration through our institutional APIs or integration capabilities. And you'll be able to see those in the integration rubric. We've also provided an integration catalog that describes the integration interfaces, the institutional APIs, and other facilities that we're building out to be able to support ancillary systems integration as we move forward. You can see from this list that, or from the catalog, which particular integration methods are available today, which ones are under development, and which ones, we're thinking that we might need at some point, but may not have started development. There are also mechanisms in the integration catalog to reach out and find out more information or to engage in the process if you want to, be a part of the development of those integration interfaces. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie to talk a little bit more in a little bit more detail about some of the APIs and interfaces that we'll be providing.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie Calderon. I'm the Associate Director for a group called Enterprise Integration within DoIT. We manage UW's integration infrastructure, which is Google Apigee, our API gateway, and Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services, or IICS, which is our low-code or no-code integration platform that enables everybody to build integrations on your own to all sorts of systems in all sorts of different modalities. Our group also builds APIs, and we build integrations for people around UW-Madison. We also provide consultation for people building integrations, and we've also helped build other API teams to actually make APIs in our emerging API ecosystem. The reason our group was formed was because integrations are effectively what makes the world go round. They're what enables you to connect UW data to your systems to enable you to do whatever it is that you do at the UW. So with that, we've created the developer portal. This is something we created about a couple years ago, I would say. And this is to expose the emerging ecosystem of APIs at UW-Madison. APIs and event-based integrations like PubSub integrations, for example, are the way that we are going to do data integration moving forward. As Tom mentioned, with cloud systems, we don't have access to the underlying databases. We can't necessarily do SQL-based extracts. So we're building APIs to enable data to flow throughout our digital ecosystem. So a couple of years ago, we established Google Apigee, and we have started to build APIs to actually expose data to various enterprise data domains like person domain, the financial domain, the HR domain, and eventually the curricular and academic domain. The APIs that we're building are exposed through our developer portal, which you can access at developer.wisc.edu. At the developer portal, you're going to find specifications for APIs. You'll find documentation for all of our APIs. And you'll also be able to start interacting with our APIs with the mock APIs that you see on the screen, like the mock HR and the mock person API. So you can start playing around with data right away once you get to the developer portal. And if it looks like it's going to work for you, you can actually kick off a request process through developer.wisc.edu as well. This is the place that we are going to publish all of this information moving forward. And it's what you'd expect if you were going out to a commercial API like Spotify or something like that. You would go to developer.spotify.com and you would see the specification. You'd be able to interact with the API right there. You'd be able to see, how is this data going to work for me? And then when you're ready, you'll be able to request access and get authorization to that API. At UW, that's what we're doing. And you're going to be able to access it here at developer.wisc.edu. Can we go on to the next, please? So the other tool that we're providing is our integration platform. And this is a low-code, no-code product that will enable everybody to take advantage of APIs, even if the way that your system consumes data isn't API friendly. For example, if you're working with a SaaS product and you just need a nightly extract of a flat file with a certain amount of data, we still want you to use these APIs that we're building, but we're providing this product, this integration platform, as a bridge to enable you to synchronize data however you might need in whatever platform you're using. IICS, or the Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services product, doesn't necessarily have any inherent data in it. Think about it more like a developer's IDE, their development platform. It's the bridge between a data source and a data target, whether that's in a discrete, nightly, sort of scheduled manner, like an ETL, an extract, transform, load process that happens in a batch basis, or whether that's more real-time with an API connection, or listening for an event like somebody was hired, go do something, send data to another system. this product enables you to build those kinds of integrations. It's the bridge between APIs and whatever system and whatever format that you happen to need it in. Our team who supports this integration platform can also build integrations for you. And we'll build these integrations using the platform so that eventually, if you might want to take over these integrations yourselves, you can use this low-code, no-code platform after you've been trained, after you've learned how to use the platform, and we'll just hand over that integration to you. And we already have a few success stories where we've been able to build integrations for folks after understanding their business needs, and then have handed over the management of those integrations with this low-code, no-code platform, where you don't need to be a developer to actually be able to manage the flow of data in between your systems. We're also happy to advise whether or not this platform could be useful to you based on your specific need, your specific use case. So I will drop our email address in the chat, and please get in touch. This is something that we've established to make integration more accessible, to democratize the process of integration, recognizing that in a world where we're using more and more cloud products and we don't have access to all the underlying technicalities of a system, these products can be used to connect our digital ecosystem. Let's go on to the next, please. So just to wrap up here, a couple things that I would mention is one, APIs are the way that we're doing data integration. So think a little bit about what kind of data your system uses, what's the modality in which you connect to data today, how can you take advantage of the APIs that we offer, start playing with mock APIs if that's a possibility for you, start understanding how the APIs that we're developing can start to replace the existing data integration mechanisms that you might have, work with the business analysts who are helping to identify your needs and identify the capabilities that your systems require, and try to start understanding how APIs, events, and the integration platform might fit in. Learn the integration platform if you can, or work with us, and we'll happily talk a little bit more about how the integration platform might fit into the systems that you manage. And of course, look for updates from us related to ATP, the ancillary systems, and also the integration catalog and integratedata.wis.edu, where we'll be publishing a lot of updates about our new capabilities. All right. And with that, I think we'll open it up for some Q&A.
Yeah, and Amanda, if you wouldn't mind kicking off the poll as well, because I think one of the things on that last slide was, look for updates in your email or on the websites, but we do have a quick poll about communication preference.
Okay, Murnas, do you have, oh, fantastic, thank you. So for me personally, as a clarifier, so we have, thinking about this in layers, we have Workday here, and then the ASP folks are building some APIs right above that. And then as a developer, I could access those APIs. And then the integration team is sort of above that, and a developer or an analyst could access those integrations or have one created for them. And then the low code, no code will kind of sit on top of that as a further way to integrate down into the. I'm checking my own understanding, so please correct me.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good characterization of the different layers of access that we're providing. We're not going to be able to have the same level of access to the underlying ERP. So our goal is to build accessible self-service APIs that express data in a UW-centric way that are effectively agnostic from the systems underneath. So it doesn't matter if it's HRS or Workday or whatever comes after Workday. We're trying to build these APIs such that it's UW data, and you can get access to those APIs to use that data however you might need. On top of that, we're providing the integration platform so that regardless of the modality, if you're working with a SaaS product that can't use an API, you can still transform that data or get access to that data in whatever format you might need by connecting to the API and then sending it off to whatever product you happen to be using at whatever frequency you might need to be using it at. Our integration team is there to help that process, to either build integrations, advise about how to use the platform, and we also curate the platform. So we make sure that it's running smoothly, that it's up and running, that we are able to handle the capacity of integrations that are built in the integration platform as we grow inevitably over the next few years. So that's really what our team is there to do.
So I'm thinking, so go ahead, Morgan.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the only other thing I might adjust in there, Amanda, for the like the hierarchy that you were thinking is, so the new low code no code platform, separate from IICS that Charlie covered, but the new low no code platform being rolled out in Anand's group within EBS. I don't anticipate that needs to sit on top of IICS. So the intention there is that would be able to interact directly with the APIs that we have available in the developer portal as well.
Okay.
That was a key evaluation criteria for selecting that platform, is to ensure that it could interact with our UW APIs.
No, that makes sense. And then, so if I was someone that was tasked, that was sitting in an office and I was tasked with creating a Tableau dashboard of Workday data, like where would that sit in this hierarchy?
So reporting is maybe a different topic that we could definitely talk about. We've been in ancillary systems. We've really been focused on integration style or integration driven mechanisms for getting folks access to Workday data. There is a lot in the way of reporting that we could talk about. The first thing to think about is is this really operational reporting for HR, finance, in which case there is a lot of capability within the Workday platform itself, and some work to bring data back into Workday to be able to use Workday tools for reporting. So that's really kind of on the operational side. If you're looking at kind of like intersecting HR and financial data with data from other domains, and talking about more of like a dimensional data warehouse type of operation, that's really kind of encompassed in UW Systems Enterprise Analytics program. And that's their direction on cloud data warehouse. But Morgan or Charlie, I don't know if you have anything else you'd want to add on that.
Yeah, no, I think that there's an anticipation, like Tom said, depending on your need and where things would fit in. I know that the Enterprise Analytics Platform initiative is expecting to be able to source Tableau dashboards. I think just it depends a bit on what data you're trying to pull together and what the need of the dashboard is.
That's an important clarification. Thank you for the reporting's over here and operational sort of integrations are over here. So, and that's where we are right now. Thank you.
And I think we do have a couple questions that are coming in the chat. And Charlie, I think the first couple are probably for you, for if there's an ATP API user group that meets kind of like data wonks. And will there be something like a Canvas presence where folks who want to start testing with the mock APIs can watch videos and get tips for getting started?
I'm not sure about the user group question. What I will mention here is that we have a team, we're calling this our API program team, that has formed around API producers. So people who are building these APIs so that the APIs that you're using, regardless of the domain, look and feel similar as a consumer. So we're working on that producer front to make sure that we have some cogent APIs available for you to use. And occasionally we are bringing in consumers to provide feedback, provide input. Our Person API group, for example, has a biweekly public sprint review that has over 100 attendees, many of whom participate on a biweekly basis, just to kind of see the updates that we're pushing out on a biweekly basis. Some of these things, I think, would be the ways to really get access to the groups that are creating APIs and understand kind of what's coming out on a recurring basis. But maybe this is something we can think a little bit about to see if there might be other ways that we might have, especially API consumer user groups, to help people just connect, talk about how you're using various APIs and understand what's available to you. So I'll definitely take that down as a suggestion, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we might provide access to something like that. Morgan,
Thank you,
Tom, anything?
Charlie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention I'm a help desk analyst, and I talk to, a couple hundred people a year, and I want to be able to point them, when it comes up that there are these mock APIs, and so Charlie, maybe you want to take down my name and we can have a separate conversation later, but I'm a big evangelist for ATP, and I want to know what to be able to tell my colleagues and my customers about these mock APIs, so that they can get going. I'm all about spreading the word about, what these people are going to need to hit the ground running, right? So yeah, Charlie, so feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation, and so I can spread the word better. Thanks.
And Scott, one of the other things to let you know too, so as we are working with ancillary system owners to make recommendations about what their integration options would look like going forward, we're also looking to create some connections within that ancillary system owner or technical contact group, so that they can be connected with others who are going to be leveraging similar integration methods.
Nice. Yeah.
And that's
I'd like to be included in that, because like I said, I talk to tons of people all the time. And so I could be a real champion for you guys, spreading the word to people who might not otherwise get it.
Yeah, and we have of course, at Madison, a pretty robust developer community, and that's not the case consistently throughout UW's systems. So one of the other reasons for trying to create some of those connections is so that we can actually also connect with developers that are, at Stout or Eau Claire or Oshkosh or Green Bay, so that we're not reinventing the wheel as well.
I'd love to help.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. Related to that, I think Scott also asked if there would be a Canvas presence where folks can learn a little bit more about how to use APIs. What I'll drop in the chat is a link to our Integrate Data website that we're in the process of updating. And our goal here is over the next, adding to it over the course of the next year, I would say, is to continue to develop our integration curriculum. We want to teach people that at UW-Madison, we haven't necessarily had an ecosystem of APIs, but they are emerging, and here's how you take advantage of them. Here's how you use them. And this isn't just specific to UW-Madison. This will pertain to UW's system, of course. Morgan, that's for you. But we also want to teach people how might you use the integration platform. What are some of the integrations that we've already built? Connecting to APIs, and what are some of the tutorials that we might be able to provide? We've got some Informatica centric documentation that actually shows real systems that we've helped to populate data in using Informatica, and our team is building new integrations. I won't say on a daily basis, but on an ongoing basis. And our goal is to be able to document that, make it a tutorial, and make it usable by everybody else. We're not going to be able to build the hundreds of integrations that we need for these ancillary systems. Our integration team is 4 people. There's another integration team in enterprise business systems, and it's a handful of people. We can't take all that work on ourselves. What we're trying to do is make this process accessible, make the tools accessible, and we're doing that through documentation and through guides. So you'll continue to see more information emerging on integratedata.wis.edu, and our goal is to make sure that everybody can use that as a resource.
So question in the chat from Becky about API performance. Is it true that needing to get data from multiple APIs concurrently can be slow? I think this one is an interesting one to talk through because it gets into the idea of your particular usage pattern and what is the best way to interact with those APIs. We have a couple of different modalities for that, but a pattern that we see an awful lot is folks that want to do bulk data through an API. They want to get data on 100,000 people, and they do that by synchronously calling the API 100,000 times. And so we do have some other patterns available today to be able to interface with data like that. We have an event-based pattern that allows you to subscribe to an event and essentially synchronize a local copy of data based on the events and the data as they're changing. We also have the ability to use the integration platform to interact with those APIs to pull data and things like that. We are looking at some of the more like bulk data extract through API use cases to track that work. API sprint reviews would be a great place to check in and see how that's developing. But we know that there's a really common scenario for ancillary systems, especially software as a solution types of systems, where the use pattern might be like extract a data file in CSV format and drop it on a vendor's S3 bucket, or SFTP it to a location. And that's where Informatica's connector-based architecture is really handy to have an API connector on one side, a set of business and transform logic within the platform itself, and then like an S3 or SFTP connector to transfer that to the vendor. So to answer the performance question, I think a lot of it depends on the use pattern that you're trying to use. And if you don't feel like there's a modality we're providing through APIs, we would love that feedback so that we can identify those use cases and start working on it.
Yeah, just to build on that, our APIs are actively in production. I mean, we are developing more capabilities every couple of weeks, and it's really important for us to hear feedback, like Tom was describing, from actual users. That's why these sprint reviews have been immensely valuable for us, just to understand, can you use what we've built? And if not, tell us why, and we'll work on that. And a couple of weeks later, new capabilities will emerge in these APIs that start to hydrate these use cases that that folks are sharing with us on an ongoing basis. So that's really useful. All right, so we have some more questions here.
Yeah, and I just answered Becky, your question about whether individual department apps and systems are being looked at as well. Absolutely. So we did the ancillary systems business analysts last year, starting late May 2022, went out to each school, college, and division on campus at least once and asked for all of their lists of systems. And that's how we got up to that 1,800 number. So we do truly hope that everything has been identified. We know there are likely still some things out there that haven't been, but that's also part of why we're asking people to, think about what the impact will be. And if there is something that hasn't been identified that you're aware of, then please do let us know. And I stuck in the chat the link out to that ancillary systems disposition list, so you can always see if there's a particular system or a particular area you're curious about. You can go and check that.
Beth asked if we see the adoption of APIs improving data standardization. Specifically, I think, Beth, your question here refers to character set support. But I'll answer it maybe a little bit more broadly. I definitely believe that the adoption of APIs is going to make the data that we're using more standard across the institution. And that's because I think when we've needed data for the last 2 decades, we've gone to the specific provider and we've asked for certain types of data. We've explained our use case. And every time somebody has built an integration in that way, it has been unique, customized, tailored to that very specific need. And I would call that a last mile integration, something that is very tailored to the hundreds of integrations that we have across our institution. the APIs present by default a standardized set of data that will look and feel similar to what you see in your Tableau reports and in your data visualizations. This is going to be, this is a way to make data not only a little bit more self-service, but definitely more standardized, more UW-centric. It removes vendor specifics, or what we've fondly referred to as PeopleSoft-isms, since we have so many implementations of various PeopleSoft products. Now going to Workday, of course, that's a little bit different, but the goal of our APIs is to make sure that we can make data accessible, but also it will be presented in a common governed format. And so I definitely think that this is a significant advancement in terms of providing more standardization. As we provide things like preferred name or name in use in the person API, you'll be able to see the full character set that people will be able to use in, for example, profile.wis.edu.
Yeah, to add to what Charlie is saying, in addition to the common data model or common data architecture, one of the things that we identify with this is some standards in terms of integration patterns that we can work on providing upgrade paths for people going forward. Today we have 800 ancillary systems. We have 800 different integration patterns in play. You know, everything is done a little bit differently. And we simply can't support an easy upgrade path for 800 different integration patterns. If we can cut that down to 5 or 6, it's a lot easier for us to be able to establish, you know, the communication and the planning associated with an upgrade path for those different integration patterns. And that's really one of the things that we're hoping that will come out of this effort.
And I think, Murnaz, you had a question about API documentation, and that is actually in the developer portal itself. So there, the specifications are available. And that did trigger one thought for me as well that I wanted to mention when looking at the developer portal and what's available there. There is, as Charlie mentioned, you know, person API is up, running, it's production data. You could choose to integrate with it right now. In the finance space, the Madison Ancillary Systems Program API team has been working on pulling together a finance API that goes against Workday. So it's going against one of our development tenants at the moment, so partial data load. But that does allow you to see as well some of that future, you know, foundation data model FDM structure that we talked about earlier. So just one caveat to note there for what's available in the dev portal, that we do have one thing out there right now that's hitting against kind of that future state data.
Thank you.
And there are a couple questions in the Padlet as well. Ramp go live this month. Do you feel there has been enough training to every level so the transition will go smoothly for them? There has been a lot of training over the past couple months. This is really for what's going live in a couple of weeks for Ramp is the pre-award and agreements piece. So it's the proposals and everything before a grant is actually awarded. I know that the Ramp group has been hitting heavy all of the user groups they can. I don't anticipate that everyone's going to feel 100% prepared on June 27th or June 26th. As with any implementation, I think there has been a lot of training, a lot of documentation. Research and sponsored programs has also been heavily engaged and involved over the past few months. There are video tutorials developed, documentation. So I think there has been a really solid effort on the training front. But the demographic of some of the users for this, it's a challenging time, right? To hit faculty just at the end of the semester and as the summer's ramping up, it's a tricky time. So there will likely be a little bit of a rocky transition, I think. in all honesty. Controlling expectations. We keep hearing that, oh, that will be in Workday or that will be fixed in Workday. How do you control those expectations? The scope can't be endlessly expanded and no software is a cure-all. It's interesting that you hear a lot of that will be fixed in Workday. I guess I don't necessarily hear that as much internally in AETP. I think what I hear is that there will be improvements to a particular process, or there will be a new way of getting us towards a more standardized approach. We do have some things that will most certainly be enhanced and improved, but I guess I'm not necessarily hearing that as a be all end all that Workday will fix everything, because whoever wrote that's absolutely right. No single piece of software can solve all of the world's problems, especially when some of them may be business process related. But if you're hearing something that's that will be in Workday and you're not sure about it, and it's related maybe to a system that exists outside of Workday, I would encourage you to reach out to the assigned business analyst for that system to ask, because we do want to make sure that things that have been, now that design is finalized and the functional teams within ATP are more comfortable and confident about how things will work in Workday, I think we should be able to better respond to questions in that space. And that was from Padlet. I think we have a couple more in the chat for our last couple minutes. Maybe.
Benedict's question is about their
Yeah, I
internal
was going to
systems.
say,
They're very similar
like
to ours,
it,
so
Amanda.
we're gonna stay plugged in with IceCube and help them along with the two. So hopefully we can take what we learn and help them with theirs too. So. Not seeing too many more, and we got 3 minutes, so you ready to wrap it up?
Well, before we leave today's session, Amanda, I would like to tell everyone the resources that we've provided you, the API catalog, the integration catalog, and things like that. We're at a stage right now where we're developing new things, and we think we're developing things that are useful to the community, but we don't know that we're developing all the things that are needed. Our goal in publishing this is so that you as system owners, as integrators, so that you can see where this work is trending. It is incredibly important that if you don't see something that you need, that you contact us and let us know, so that we can start to engage and start to move in a direction that's providing you the tools that you do need. We fully acknowledge that some of what we've got out there is incomplete. We really need to understand how it's incomplete so that we can direct our efforts, and that is going to depend on your feedback.
And I did just want to follow up quickly, David, to your question, a place to get more detailed documentation, how the data should be interpreted uniformly. So there are the customer confirmation sessions cover a lot of Workday functionality, but part of what they also cover is how things are structured or how things are referred to in the future with Workday. I think there are some that would be relevant to view even for developers, like the foundation data model, since that's such a shift. If you're doing anything in the finance realm, I think that's worth understanding, because it is important to understand as the data is coming out of Workday that, we don't just have projects now. We have projects, gifts, programs, and grants. And all 4 of those have different than relationships to related Workday. So I think some of those things are available.
Yeah, I've attended or watched those sessions. They've been very helpful, but it's sort of the next step. Okay, like just use our current system. I don't have any examples right now, but how do you interpret, like there's a value in there and I can get that value through the API, but how do I know that everyone is treating that the same way, that like, yes, we can spend this money, or this person is actually an employee? Like, what is there a data dictionary of what those values actually mean and should mean to our business processes?
And that is, I'm sure Tom wants to jump in here on that one.
Yeah, I can do that. This is an area that intersects both campus and system data governance, and there is definitely work afoot around that to be able to tie HR and finance business data in these systems and delivered via these APIs back to a data catalog. We do have a Madison data catalog on Dapper's website that provides, it's a lot more academically focused. But as part of the system EAP project, they're also rolling out a product called Calibra, which is a data catalog and data governance automation platform. And our intention is to be able to evaluate that, make sure it makes sense for Madison, and then make sure that we've got integration between that and APIs and things like that.
Hearing no more questions from the gallery here, I think we'll wrap this one up. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you Morgan and Tom and Charlie for coming and giving us an update. I know you'll keep talking to us through all of these things as often as we can. And thank you very much.
Thanks, all.
The recording of the session should be available sometime late next week on the conference website. Thank you.